Well, hello and welcome to your Newsmax Daily for Monday, January 6th, 2025, the first Monday of the new year and a big news day. And the Epiphany, celebrating or observing last night's arrival of the Magi, or three wise men, in Bethlehem to acknowledge the birth of Jesus as the Son of God. The 12th day of the 12 days of Christmas, today also known as Three Kings Day, or Little Christmas in some places, including Italy, whose Prime Minister, Giorgia Meloni, spent the weekend at Mar-a-Lago with President-elect Trump ahead of today's election certification. Big day, as Congress and tens of millions of other Americans are dealing with severe winter weather, pushing from the Midwest all the way to the East Coast, including Washington, D.C. Snow, freezing rain, making it nearly impossible to travel in some places. More than 1,700 flights have been canceled already, and thousands have been delayed. January 6th, of course, also marks one of the ugliest days in recent history for our country, the 2021 riot on January 6th at the U.S. Capitol and the assault on freedom and liberty that has followed since that day. We all know exactly what President Trump said on that day, right? We all know Nancy Pelosi didn't call for more security or take Trump's advice on the National Guard. We all know there were undercover FBI agents in the Capitol. We've all seen the videos of Capitol Police letting people in and opening doors mysteriously. We've all seen the senseless killing of Ashley Babbitt, and we know after taking office in 12 days, President Trump is expected to grant clemency to hundreds of people serving unjust prison sentences for their actions on that day. A day or an event, let's say, that should never have happened and should never happen again. More from Greg Kelly.
The security camera footage from January 6th of 2021. Remember this stuff? I got a little glimpse of it on Tucker's show. I got a little glimpse of it on this documentary, maybe that documentary, but not too much, especially when the Horns guy was being escorted around by Capitol Police like he was part of the operation somehow. Totally bizarre. And it's really frustrating that we have not been granted all 40,000 hours of this stuff, as Kevin McCarthy promised us. Remember him? Remember Kevin? Yeah, Kevin McCarthy.
I think the American public should actually see all what happened instead of a report that's written for a political basis.
That's right. That would have been nice. And then the guy who took your job said essentially the same thing, that we all needed to see this footage. In a statement, when I ran for Speaker, I promised to make accessible to the American people that 44,000 hours of video from Capitol Hill security taken on January 6, 2021. Truth and transparency are critical. Next, please. Today, we will begin immediately posting video on a public website and move as quickly as possible to add to the website nearly all of the footage, more than 40,000 hours. Well, we're about 40,000 hours shy of that. We have very little footage to see. And why is that? I mean, why haven't we seen it? What's going on? Is he a little bit too protective of the institution? Is he intimidated by the Capitol Police? Again, I'm glad that Speaker Johnson has the job at least through Monday, because the certification of the election is important. I also think it's important to figure out this. Who is the little cop? And why is it that we've been the only ones pointing this out? Who is that cop who's aggressively waving people on to the Hill, Capitol Hill, on January 6th? Why were these police officers just standing there as people came right on in? Hello, welcome to the Capitol. Yes, here you go, right this way. Totally weird, right? And of course, the death of Ashley Babbitt at the hands of Capitol Hill cop Michael Byrd. Just completely and totally indefensible, that shooting, as well as the total lack of curiosity and aggressiveness in holding Officer Byrd accountable. Now Lieutenant Byrd, he got promoted. Oh, and he got a big fat bonus. Adds up to something like $200,000. Yeah, Michael Byrd and a lot of Republicans up there on Capitol Hill. I'm sorry, Michael Johnson, a little bit too comfortable with that guy hanging around Congress. I wouldn't want a guy with an itchy trigger finger like that. Something else we've been looking into. Why do those police officers just, and they're their names, they take a coffee break at the critical time? Would you want these cops guarding your township, your village? Because here they go. Well, things are getting a little bit hot. Let's just get out of here. What do you say? Let's go away. Yeah, there they go. All hell breaks loose. And Ashley Babbitt is about a half minute from getting killed at the hands of Michael Byrd. What's up with that? And what's up with these Republicans on Capitol Hill who aren't aggressive in seeing this stuff out? Look at Mike Johnson here. Look at all the perks of power. Everybody, it's like he's a little prince. Everywhere he goes, he's got people hanging all over him. You think he could possibly pull some strings to get Michael Byrd off the police force? Or at least put him somewhere else and give him a demotion, not a promotion? Why have power if you can't use it to get rid of a corrupt cop? What's going on up there?
Newsmax host Greg Kelly. Today's election certification led by Vice President Harris, announcing that she was defeated by President Trump. And January 6th, 2021 is what you're going to be hearing a lot about throughout the day and tonight. And Friday's vote to re-elect House Speaker Mike Johnson. More from Carl Higbie.
So after a bunch of speeches about all the great things Congress intends to do, they nominated Mike Johnson, basically citing Trump's endorsement. And after a floor vote, a backdoor discussion with 3 holdouts, 2 of them came back, changed their vote, and Johnson was elected Speaker.
In recent months, we've witnessed something happening, something that's really remarkable, a political moment in our modern history. A groundswell of Americans from every state, race, and religion who now demand that we put the interest of Americans first again, and we will. In coordination with President Trump, this Congress will give our border and immigration enforcement agents the resources that they need to do their job. We will secure the border, we will deport dangerous, criminal, illegal aliens, and finally finish building the border wall.
Respectfully, Mr. Speaker, you better. Democrats obviously nominated Hakeem Jeffries, and because Democrats are all basically incapable of anything but groupthink, they all voted for Hakeem in lockstep. So 3 Republicans initially did not vote for Johnson, leaving him originally too shy of the 218 he needed. You want to know why I think these Republicans held out, even despite Trump's endorsement? Because they didn't think Johnson would be a good Trump ally behind closed doors. Look, I get the Trump endorsement. Trump is a massive disruptor for D.C. already, but he needs some semblance of an ally in the House, which is Mike Johnson. It was only an upside for him to endorse Johnson, because if Johnson couldn't get the votes, it didn't hurt Trump. But if Johnson got the votes without Trump's endorsement, it would have hurt his legislative relationship for the next 2 years. Let's look at the people who voted against him in round 1 and why. You had Massey, Norman, and Keith Self, okay? Keith Self was endorsed by Donald Trump and has publicly supported him on basically every occasion. Norman was originally a Trump supporter. He even voted against certifying the 2020 election, but then endorsed Nikki Haley in 2024. Massey endorsed Trump in 2024 after originally supporting Ron DeSantis, but he's a die-hard libertarian. So let's look at a few reasons why these guys might have voted against Mike Johnson. It wasn't because they didn't like Trump. So I think the first one, honestly, the FISA court. Johnson built a ton of allies that may have actually even helped propel him into the speakership in the first place by saying that he would not authorize the FISA courts again. Yet the first thing he did when he became speaker was reauthorize the FISA courts again. Johnson promised to release all the January 6 tapes. We haven't seen all those yet. On many occasions also, he insinuated a balanced budget and no more omnibuses and individual bills on 12 separate budgets. Yet we had CR after CR after CR and no actual budget at all. And I think the biggest thing to consider here for at least 2 of these holdouts is that they didn't think that Mike Johnson would fully execute the Trump agenda when it counted. Now, I think Trump knew this as well, but he was hedging his bets, and here's why. Trump told Johnson, and this is, I don't know if anybody knows this yet, but Trump told Johnson in private, I know this from speaking to a number of representatives now, that the only thing he wanted in the recent budget deal was a debt ceiling increase. And Johnson didn't tell anyone in leadership on the Republican side about that conversation until after the 3rd bill passed at the last minute, the Friday before the holidays, without a debt ceiling increase. So for the people screaming that Johnson is part MAGA agenda, is he? I hope with the total grasp on the government from Republicans, he becomes that. But that was the reservation of many of, and I talked to a lot of people who honestly even voted for Mike Johnson round one and were still concerned about this themselves. But they did it out of party unity. So to get those last two holdouts, though, Johnson had to go into deal making, which Johnson said he wouldn't do.
My simple message to my colleagues is make suggestions about process improvements. We're open to that at all times, but I don't make deals with anyone. There's no quid pro quo here. I don't do anything in exchange for a vote other than commit to make this institution work as effectively and efficiently as possible.
Johnson had to make a deal with less than 1% of the Republican Party in order to keep the gavel. What was said? Look there. Look at his face. This is him introducing he's being introduced as the 119th congressional speaker of the House. He looks nervous. I don't blame him, because beside anything else, he's got to deliver now. But also, I have a sneaking suspicion, and I'm sure we'll find out in the next few days, that he made a deal with those two people behind closed doors that he's probably not real happy about, much like Kevin McCarthy did with the one-vote motion to vacate.
Carl Higbie is the host of Frontline, 5 p.m. Eastern on Newsmax. One of the no votes who was persuaded to vote is South Carolina Congressman Ralph Norman.
You never know how these things are going to come out. I didn't know how everybody was going to vote, but I knew we needed to impress on Mike Johnson that we're serious about budget, we're serious about the border, we're serious, and is he going to fight? There wasn't any negotiation, there wasn't any quid pro quo. He agreed to fight with a list of things that he knew where we stood.
So there you go. Just like Speaker Johnson, he says no quid pro quo. No deal was made. And like Carl said, time will tell. Yesterday, President Biden signed the Social Security Fairness Act into law. It essentially allows for millions of Americans who collect a public pension to also collect their full Social Security without any penalty due to their pension. It's sort of a big deal. I told you about that a few weeks ago when it was in the Senate. Biden, in another effort to obstruct Donald Trump, is blocking offshore drilling in the Atlantic and Pacific, saying it is not necessary to meet the country's energy needs. And the president and first lady are scheduled to travel to New Orleans today. The White House says they'll be meeting with community members and families impacted by the tragic attack on January 1st. The tragic attack. They didn't say terrorist attack. They'll also be attending a prayer service tonight. Meanwhile, the FBI investigation of the terror attack continues to raise some eyebrows. This was the focus of Sunday Agenda with Lidia Curanaj, beginning with the FBI agent who first said it was not a terror attack.
This is not a terrorist event. What it is right now is their improvised explosive devices that was found, and we are working on confirming if this is a viable device or not.
So now the FBI is declining to say whether or not it will discipline that agent that you just heard talking right there, who either told us a bold-faced lie or just is incompetent at her job, doesn't know what she was talking about. I mean, the FBI also hasn't answered why in the weeks leading up to the holidays, federal law enforcement and intelligence agencies, they warned police around the country that low-tech vehicle ramming was a key concern and that they needed to prepare. So if this memo went out to all law enforcement agencies, New York City heeded the warning, Las Vegas, LA, you name it, why didn't the New Orleans police at the very least implement steel barriers? Look, like those archers right there. They claimed their barriers were being repaired. If that is indeed true, why not put up, post up fire trucks, cement trucks, garbage trucks, anything to stop a car from careening and killing people? Instead, all the New Orleans police do is put up those things that you see right there to protect thousands of people in the streets of New Orleans that they come out every single New Year's. Those flimsy white and orange plastic barricades. What a joke. Speaking of a joke, New Orleans Police Chief Ann Kirkpatrick even acting all offended when a reporter questions her department's massive security failure.
Do you acknowledge that you let the victims down by not having an appropriate security plan?
Oh, that's not correct. That's not correct. We would disagree with that. We had a
plan that allowed
plan.
An attacker to drive into a crowd.
And I take exception to that, and I do not agree with that.
That has to be a failure.
We do know that people have lost their lives. But if you're experienced with terrorism, you would not be asking that question.
Well, with respect, experience of terrorism surely requires...
Unbelievable. She takes exception to that. She wouldn't acknowledge it was a security failure. And did you see that smirk? Her little snide response? She's got some nerve. That woman, I'm sorry, she's a disgrace to the uniform. And even worse, I want you to take a listen to this. Apparently, she didn't even know about the steel archers that we showed before, that the city had implemented. They had them since 2017. These are specifically designed to stop cars from running people over in the streets of the French Quarter.
Chief, where did those archers come from?
Sorry?
Those yellow archers, where did they come from?
Actually, we have them. I didn't know about them, but we have them. And so we have been able now to put them out.
She didn't know they had them? You're the police chief. Thank God her officers, they're smart guys and brave. They had the courage to run to the danger and then shoot and kill that monster Jabbar before he could massacre more people. So now, if you put all this into perspective, look at these. We have two female members of law enforcement that perhaps should be rethinking their career choices. I find it really hard to believe that these two women were the best candidates for their respective positions, because how do you make such massive mistakes like the ones they made? The FBI also initially said that Jabbar had accomplices. The FBI also stating that the Tesla bombing in Las Vegas wasn't connected to the New Orleans attack either. But many pointing to the fact that both men were Army vets. They both served at Fort Bragg. They both used the same rental car agency. But the bottom line is this. No one knows what to believe anymore. Because when it comes to the federal government, our own president has lied straight to our faces, Mayorkas, you name it, more times than we even know about what the real threat to democracy is.
Newsmax host Lidia Curanaj on Sunday Agenda. The superintendent of the New Orleans Police Department is a 65-year-old woman named Ann Kirkpatrick. Before that, she was the chief of the Spokane Police Department as well as the Oakland Police Department. So she definitely has some credentials, right? The FBI and other law enforcement agencies are being slammed for recent DEI hiring practices. This is Tom Basile, host of America Right Now.
Welcome back to America Right Now. I'm Tom Basile. Over the last year, Americans have demonstrated pretty clearly they're fed up with DEI, or diversity, equity, and inclusion, one of the top mantras of the woke politics of the American left. Of late, there's been a lot of high-fiving over the ending of DEI programs at major corporations like Ford and Coors, Lowe's, Boeing, Walmart, Costco, Tractor Supply, even Jack Daniels is getting rid of it. Some universities are also dialing back their allegiance to these policies as well. Many courageous Americans have made it their mission to expose this systemic discrimination. Many have voted with their wallets and at the ballot box to push back. They took on the DEI complex at great risk to their jobs, reputations, and personal lives. But Americans fighting this fight should be careful not to celebrate prematurely. DEI is far from DOA. That would be to ignore the designs and the pattern of behavior of the American left. The left in this country has no problem violating the Civil Rights Act by pushing diversity, equity, and inclusion. But DEI, of course, is not really a new phenomenon. What started out decades ago as quotas then became affirmative action. Remember that? Because it sounded better, much like the way leftists use the term progressive today rather than liberal or socialist. After a time, then, affirmative action got a makeover as diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, which in the post-Obama era became a more militant form of affirmative action. DEI this time around also had close cousins and confederates such as critical race theory, white fragility, gender fluidity, and even cancel culture. There will be another incarnation of this movement. Don't be fooled. They may not call it DEI, but they will call it something. Now, sure, many of the overpaid DEI corporate human resources czars and lecturers and experts who have made a fortune hawking their divisive secular religion will face some setbacks, but they're not just going to go away. Throughout the course of American history, the most atrocious examples of injustice have come when society or the law have chosen to focus on immutable characteristics like race. Pro-freedom Americans must always appreciate the deliberate control the left attempts to have over the language that we use. We've talked about it on this show before. And we're seeing it right now again with the debate over so-called book bans. Even conservatives are yet again falling for the trap. They're using the misleading term coined by the left to demonize efforts to remove essentially pornography and inappropriate material from school and public libraries. The book ban moniker was intentionally chosen to harken back to the days of the Nazi book burnings. Of course, the books aren't banned. You can still buy them, you can still sell them, write them, own them, and read them. Those facts and long-standing and completely legal practices of place and time and manner restrictions on certain speech, of course, don't matter to Democrats who want this perverse material in schools. Now, the same people who came up with that scheme are the ones who came up with DEI.
Again, that's Tom Basile, host of America Right Now, Saturday mornings on Newsmax. Tom talking about the book ban reminds me of the so-called Florida Don't Say Gay law. You remember that? Something I covered extensively as a news reporter in Florida, which was purely a fabricated attack on Governor DeSantis, who the left knew would likely be running for president. There is no such thing as the Don't Say Gay law. Although, if you Google it, they still attach the Don't Say Gay law to HB 1557, which is actually the law. There's no such thing as the Don't Say Gay law. HB 1557 prohibits instruction of sexual orientation or gender identity in schools. And for all the criticism, in fact, it's K through 8 schools. All right, so it's a big newsworthy day in D.C., obviously, 12 days away from Inauguration Day. President Biden heads to New Orleans, and on Wall Street, stock markets opened the first full trading week of the new year well into the green. There are a few economic reports due out this week, capped off by the jobs report on Friday. That's the highlight of the week coming at the end of the week. This all obviously is being absorbed by the feds and could play into future interest rate cuts. All right, I mentioned the Italian prime minister visiting with Donald Trump at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. Bloomberg News is reporting that the prime minister is also working on a huge Italy deal with Elon Musk and SpaceX. And mourners continue to pay their respects to former President Jimmy Carter, who now lies in repose at the Carter Center in Georgia, before traveling to the U.S. Capitol later this week. Be sure to keep up with all of it and all the breaking developments throughout the day on Newsmax, N2, and Newsmax.com. It begins each and every day with Wake Up America, National Report, Bianca De La Garza, American Agenda, Carl Higbie, Finnerty, Rob Schmidt, Greg Kelly Reports, Greta, The Right Squad, and much, much more with fantastic expert analysis. I'm Tony Marino. This is the Newsmax Daily. I hope you had a fantastic weekend and long Christmas vacation as we get back to business, and hopefully you're not stuck at home in the storm. If you're traveling, good luck with that, and keep on fighting the good fight.
News breaks every minute, every day. You need the app, the Newsmax app. Find it free on your smartphone store. Then watch us anytime, anywhere.
Relentlessly slowing the spread of the stupid every day. It's the Rob Carson Show.
Hey, it's Rob Carson. My podcast is about leading-edge commentary and opinion, great guests, and the biggest political comedy in the country. My satire was featured on the Rush Limbaugh program for over a decade, and now it's fresh and new and on my podcast. It's not just another desk-pounding conservative tirade. It's about entertaining, informing, and motivating. Patriotism and hope. You don't need more stress in your life. You need to feel good and, dare I say, even laugh. Subscribe and download at your favorite podcast platform or go to Newsmax.com/listen.
Information. Truth is freedom. Is Newsmax. It's real news for real people.